I made a previous video about the connection between being brought up in a home with a lot of indifference as a child and the connection to shame. And in this video, I'm gonna extrapolate a little bit on that and mostly focus on one of the mechanisms of shame and how that one can look and how it can play out and why it becomes like a double punishment. Even though it is an attempt to get out of it, it actually becomes, in one way, even worse. So when we have been dismissed, rejected, or met with a lot of indifference as a child, in one way or another, the belief forms that whatever we are putting out, whatever we are expressing, and whatever we essentially are is not good enough. And since the child is very self-centered in its worldview, everything it kind of that meets it, or the way the world responds to it, it attributes to itself. So if a parent has a limited capacity to meet the child and interact with it, the child will not understand this, but it will rather attribute it to itself. So that means that whatever it's not getting or expecting and longing to get, and some of the things are very inherent for all human beings, that we have some expectations and longings and desires of how interactions should feel and play along. And if we're not getting that, then something is obviously wrong, and then it's attributed to the self, that I'm wrong, whatever I'm putting out or expressing is not right. And when that is happening in one way or another, the child will kind of manipulate, curate, or tinker with the ways in which it is expressing itself so that to kind of get what it wants, and thinking that if it can only kind of be better or do better, then it will actually get the response that feels correct. But if the parent or parents or early caregivers don't have the capacity to kind of give what the child wants, then it's knocking on a closed door, and it really doesn't matter how much it manipulates or tries to change itself to kind of get what it wants. So it's really like knocking on a closed door. But to some degree, this is actually better than actually realizing the powerlessness and futility of the situation, because that would actually maybe be even worse, to see that you are completely powerless to get what you want. So rather, there is this hope that if I am just better or do better, then something will change, because that actually brings some hope to the situation. But it could be that this continues over many years, even as the child kind of goes into adulthood, and that is always trying to fix and curate itself so to get that the reaction that it wants. One thing that early childhood shame does is that it never really builds the sense of self-worth for the child, which is super important for later in life. A person that is and has been kind of supported to build the sense of self-worth early in life, they will have the sense of self-worth that whatever they're doing, that they're actually worthy. And later in life, when they are doing something and maybe they're not getting a response that they want or expected, then it will not hit so personal, because they know that they are essentially have a sense of self-worth anyways. So if something doesn't land, something doesn't go the way that they hope or expect, it doesn't really get to their core, and they can chalk it up as that went a little bit wrong, that didn't go as I hoped, that person was rude. But a person that hasn't built up this and has a problem with self-worth and shame, they will always take it as something that is personally wrong with them. And it's just another piece of evidence that something is flawed with them and that they need to do better. So they are always in the mindset and having their attention, and sometimes very subconsciously, that they are focusing on trying to become the person that is worthy, that is getting the reactions and getting the kind of validation that they have longed for. So essentially, it is problem solving. It is the mind constantly trying to solve the problem. How do I fix myself? And then it's kind of a repeating problem that comes over and over, no matter the situation, that there is, no matter the situation, the question of how do I fix myself? How do I posture myself? How do I act and be like the person that is going to kind of be the missing puzzle piece? But of course, this is just like in early childhood, a closed door, because there is no right way to be. There is no way to kind of fix the problem. The right way is, of course, to be authentic and then being mirrored in that. And then through authentic communication and expression, build up a sense of self-confidence and a sense of self-worth that eventually turns out to be not contingent and hinging upon the reaction that you get from other people. And also, people in adult life are usually not as giving and validating as parents are supposed to be early on, where they are super validating towards the child's emotional expression. And the thing that they were looking for and hoping for as a child, you usually don't get in adulthood because you're not treated the same way. Yet the longing and the desire is kind of still there. So it's a bit tricky. But the important part is really to see how the mind is acting and behaving to kind of solve the problem. The mind is very much a problem solver, and sometimes it's very good, but sometimes in some situations it's a bit misplaced. Trying to kind of solve your way out of some situations is not going to work. And sometimes when the mind is very hung up on something, that it needs to fix a problem, and it tries a million different ways and none of them are working, and it thinks like, if I just tinker a little bit this way, if I just do a little bit of this, always searching for a solution that maybe is not there, then it becomes a problem. It is essentially a problem that the mind thinks that the mind can solve, when it's never really the mind that is supposed to solve it from the beginning. Because this is the point, the things that you usually are longing for and desiring, which kind of the mind is trying to solve with, how do I fix myself? When you are constantly in having your attention bent on this, you're actually missing all the opportunities to get the things that you want. All of these kind of depend on that you are reaching out into the world, expressing yourself and being authentic, and then having the world kind of respond back to you and build from there. All of these things are kind of stopped from the start by the mind and you being super obsessed with the question of, how do I fix myself? Because that will create such an internal focus. Always looking for an internal answer, making sure that you are feeling the right way, acting the right way, doing the right thing. It's so much self-monitoring that is involved with this, and self-checking in. It becomes like super obsessed with the self to kind of fix itself. And paradoxically and unfortunately, it actually hinders you from doing the things that will actually get you to where you want to be. It's a little bit of a catch-22. It's very ironic, it's very paradoxical, and it's of course very unfortunate as well. So actually being less focused on fixing yourself, being less focused on your internal problems, and being less self-obsessed with what all the things that are wrong with you that you should fix, all the ways in which, if you behaved, or trying to figure out the right way to behave or do, that you think will solve the situation. If you just kind of, to some degree, can see that that mechanism alone is preventing you quite a lot from getting where you want, then maybe those mechanisms can loosen a little bit, and you can maybe start to see that what's actually going to help you is maybe to lift your gaze a little bit to people, to life, to opportunities, and being out there in life, even if it doesn't really feel the way that you want. That is usually a big thing. We want certain things from life, but we also want them to feel a certain way. We don't want to feel uncomfortable. We don't want to feel exposed, naked, and incompetent, and all those things. And therefore we try to fix ourselves so that we feel good before we make the move. Again, it doesn't work like that. It is way better to kind of go out there, feel a little bit exposed, incompetent, and all of those things. With time, some self-confidence and sense of self-worth will build up, which it would never do if you are constantly kind of trying to get ready before taking the first step, preparing yourself into infinity, where you're always trying to become the perfect person before taking the first step, always trying to kind of have everything under control before doing anything. But my core message is really regarding the principle and the mechanism of self-obsession and self-fixation, and the idea that we need to fix ourselves before we kind of go out, and seeing how that is actually wasting our time sometimes, and that the mechanism is unfortunately not working. That is just an extension of the original shame problem, that we didn't get what we wanted because we were not good enough. So now we are constantly trying to self-fix ourselves, but rather that we are enough and that our self-worth is not dependent on being perfect. And lastly, I want to say that I think it's a little bit also a cultural thing. And I think it's very I think society levels and personal levels and all hierarchies of the society, so to say, are interlinked. But I think there's a reason why we have so much focus on productivity, performance, that is to some degree putting out some kind of message that you are not enough, you need to be more, you need to become optimally productive, efficient, and being able to deliver on all aspects of life perfectly. Can I get back to something a little bit more healthy, where we're not kind of getting bombarded with messages from society that we need to be perfect in all areas? It's not healthy, it's not good for us, and it's not going to lead to anything good either way. Even if you to a degree become perfect in the eyes of society, that just means that you're going to become very hollow and empty on the inside, and that you have self-sacrificed in dozen different ways. So that's also just a loop we need to kind of cut out completely, is my opinion. Let me know your thoughts on this and how you relate to this. I'm very interested, and I'll see you in the next video.